Hello, my name is Marius, and I'm going to make an analysis of the short story Hills Like White Elephants by Ernest Hemingway. The short story is minimalistic, and it's minimalistic because we only get the conversations between the man and the girl, and then explanations of the few actions that are taking place in the story. The setting in the short story is actually quite simple, as we only have one location and primarily two people talking. We are on a bar at a train station in Spain, and we're being told that it's very hot. Already in the beginning of the story, it says that it's close to some white hills, so already there we have a connection to the title, which is Hills Like White Elephants. There is an American man and a girl, and they're talking and probably waiting for the train. And now I'm going to talk about the plot. The story is about a couple, but actually it's first at page 2 that we know that they're a couple, because they say, "That's all we do, isn't it? Look at things and try new drinks." And then through the story we become more and more sure that they're a couple. But back to the beginning, the two of them is ordering beers, and they're ordering big ones and drinks too. And I think this could either be because they want to avoid a conversation or a subject, or because they're going to have a tough conversation, and then it would be easier if they were tipsy or something like that. And actually, I think it's confirmed already in the beginning of the story that there is this subject that they don't want to talk about, as the girl looked at the hills and say they look like white elephants. And here I think she's referring to the phrase, the elephant in the room. And the elephant in the room, or this elephant, is often a subject or a thing that everybody's thinking about, but nobody wants to mention. Yeah, so for the whole next page, they're just avoiding this subject with irrelevant conversations about the drinks and stuff like that. But then at one point, the man says, "It's really an awfully simple operation." And I think most readers are very confused now, because what is this operation? And at first I thought, maybe it's just a breast surgery or something like that. But then later down, the man says, "We'll be fine afterwards, just like we were before." And because of this, I think they're talking about an abortion. Yeah, and through this dialogue, the girl seems to be really doubting whether to have this abortion or not, while the man just wants to convince her not to have it. And even though he says that if you don't want to have it, you shouldn't have it, then it seems like there's an undertone from his side saying that he would not be happy if she didn't have it. Yeah, and I think it's notable that at no point he is talking about wanting to start a family with her or wanting to have this child with her. It's always just going back to this uncommitting relationship where they're just having fun and being happy. Yeah, and I think the girl is really suppressing her feelings here, because obviously it means a lot to a person to be pregnant. Yeah, and also in the last sentence of the story, it says that there's nothing wrong with me, I feel fine. The girl says that, and I think it's clearly wrong, as just before she got upset because she didn't want the man to even speak, and I think that's proof that she is suppressing her feelings. And then at the end of the story, the man is getting ready to leave, and I think it's quite notable too that they're being told that the train leaves in 5 minutes, and then the girl is smiling. So actually, I think she wants to get rid of this man. She actually doesn't need him anymore. Yeah, and I think they're probably separated from here. And here I think that the symbolic of being at a train station comes in, because that could symbolize that they are going in opposite directions. So now I'm going to talk about the characters, and I'm going to start with the girl. So the only thing we really get to know about the girl is that her name is Jig, and this could even just be her nickname. But I think that's the interesting part of this minimalistic style. You have to look beneath the surface to really get to know the characters. Yeah, so I think in the first half of the story, the girl is quite submissive. For example, she says, "I don't care about me," which indirectly is saying that she only cares about him. And I also think that the fact that Hemingway is naming them the man and the girl is making this condition of dominance and submissiveness look even more natural. But I think in the second half of the story, the girl is actually becoming more confident. For example, she makes the man stop talking only because she wants him to shut up. Um, and I think, this is a reaction from all her suppressed feelings, as I mentioned earlier, because she doesn't want to be his puppet anymore. She wants to be liberated from his dominance. And I think if we have to look at a proof in the text for this, I think could be that when the woman in the bar says that the train is leaving in 5 minutes, she's smiling, and I think this sends a message to us that she wants to be free from him now. And I think based on this, I can conclude that she will have this child and not have an abortion, as the man probably wants. Yeah. So now I'm going over to the man as a character. And the only real info we get about him, and that's not even about him as a person, is just that in the end of the story it says that he's going to leave with the train. But still, I think already in the beginning we can conclude that he has a lot of money because whatever drink the girl mentions, she just can have it if she wants to. So he probably has a lot of money as a man would have at that time. But I think, according or following this dominance and submissiveness, he actually has the opposite way of going in the story, because he starts as the more dominant one, and then he becomes more submissive. But I still think he becomes submissive in a different kind of way than the girl does, because he just thought that he'd done what he could. And then he just stopped trying to convince her. Yeah, and I think the girl being submissive and the man being dominant is actually only natural at this time. It's normal at this time, and therefore I think it's funny if we look the story into the context. It's actually the girl's behavior that's odd. Because it was normal at that time for a girl to be more submissive and a man to be more dominant. But if we're going back to the man as a character, I think he's quite manipulative, especially in his arguing. He seems like it seems like his arguing has a lot of tactics in it. For example, he uses a lot of pathos, with traditionally would be more appealing to women, or that's at least what we thought. But this didn't work, and the girl seems to be having the baby anyway. So actually, this tactics in his arguing doesn't work, and the woman seems to be more confident than you would think a woman would be at that time. So I think she's actually a bit in front of her time, and that could also be a message from the story. So if I had to put some themes in this short story, I think relationship would be an obvious one, because obviously this couple is in a relationship. And I think the interesting angle of this short story is how it's challenging the traditional relationship, because I think at this time it would be normal for the couple just to have the child and then start a family, but instead they're having this flowing relationship, which is, I think, causing all these issues. I think another theme could be choices, and specifically the difficulties of choices. Because I think the man is leaving the girl with only one choice: have this abortion. And I think what this story is really about for the girl is freeing herself from the man's commands, and liberate herself from his dominance. And then in the end, the story is actually more about the freedom of choices. And I think this is quite interesting to talk about if you look at the story in the context and into the period, because I think that at this time there were a great transition in women's rights. So therefore the story is very interesting, looking at the period and also looking at the present. And then going over to the message, if I should say one clear message that I think Ernest Hemingway is trying to tell, I think it's be clearer in your communication. Because I think what's causing all these issues is that they are not being clear in their communication. It's always these indirect indications of what they mean, but if they were just saying how they were feeling, this subject would be a lot easier to talk about.